Yes, Rida. What happened?
I can't find my book. I think I left it.
Can't find your book?
Yeah.
You and your problem.
Oh, no, like I kept it, but then one second.
Did you find it?
Yes, ma'am. Okay.
I think we are done with the endosperm development. We have to begin with the embryo development.
Yes, ma'am.
So, moving forward, now after the endosperm gets developed, then like for the development of embryo, little bit of the endosperm has to be formed. So the embryo, it develops at the micropylar end, okay, where the zygote is situated, meaning that zygote develops into the embryo. Now, most of the zygote, it starts to divide only after some endosperm has been made so that the developing embryo gets all the nourishment. Now, the early embryo development is called as embryogeny. Geny means genesis of the formation. Now, the embryogeny or the embryo development, it is same in most of the cases for both monocot and dicot plants. And it goes through a variety of stages. For example, the different names of the stages: proembryo, globular embryo, there is heart-shaped embryo, and then ultimately the mature embryo. So the embryo has these various stages that it undergoes. When we talk about the dicot embryo, so dicot embryo, first of all, it has the embryonal axis, okay, on which the cotyledons will be present. And the region that is above the embryonic, embryonal axis, we call it as epicotyle, and the region below, we call it as hypocotyle. Now,
Yes, ma'am.
in the epicotyle region, there is the presence of plumule, and in the hypocotyle region, there is the presence of radicle. Now, the plumule gives rise to the stem of the plant, whereas the radicle, it gives rise to the root of the plant. Okay?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Now, since we are talking about the dicots, so they would have two cotyledons. Now, moving forward, this is the exact same thing it's written, what I've just said. The root, like its tip is covered with a cap or thimble-like structure, which we call as the root cap, so as to provide protection as the root descends more down in the soil. So to provide the protection, the root cap is present. When we talk about the monocot embryo, so you know that they have one cotyledon and they have a fancy name for the cotyledon, which is scutellum. Okay, scutellum, it's situated towards one side. It's lateral in position as compared to the embryonal axis. Now,
Yes,
in
ma'am.
the monocot embryo, there is also radicle in plumule, which gives rise to the stem and the root like that. But they have external sheath present. So the radicle, it is like enclosed in a sheath-like structure called as foliorhiza. And the plumule is enclosed in a foliar or a sheath-like structure called as coleoptile. Okay, so remember coleoptile has P in it, so it covers the plumule.
Yes,
Coleorhiza
ma'am.
are in it, so it covers the radicle.
Yes, ma'am.
Then after that, the seed gets formed. Now, once the ovule matures, it becomes a seed. And you can also call seed as the fertilized ovule. Now,
Yes,
depending
ma'am.
upon whether the endosperm is persistent or not, the seeds are of three types: endospermic, non-endospermic, and perispermic. When we talk about the endospermic seeds, so endosperm is persistent. It's not consumed by the developing embryo. Okay, the other name for the endospermic seed is albuminous seed. So here, while the embryo is developing, they do not eat up or they do not consume the whole entire endosperm. Rather, they leave some behind, such as in the case of wheat and maize together, wheat. So wheat, maize, barley, coconut, castor, and even in the sunflower, that's the case.
Yes,
After
ma'am.
that, the non-endospermic or the ex-albuminous seeds are the ones that have their endosperm completely consumed, meaning no endosperm is left,
Yes,
such as in
ma'am.
the case of pea, bean, groundnut, in that. And the
Yes,
last
ma'am.
one is the perispermic seed, wherein the nucellus is still found. Remnants of nucellus is seen. Okay, nucellus, that nutritive tissue is found. And the residual or the remnant nucellus is called as perisperm. So the seeds that have the perisperm present, we call them as the perispermic seeds,
Yes, ma'am.
such as the black pepper, the beet, and everything. Now, talking about the structure of the seed, first of all, it has a hard covering which is formed by the integuments when they harden. Okay, so the seed coat is there, which is tough and protective layer. And it has two layers, like one is the outer layer, one is the inner layer. The outer layer is called as the testa. The inner layer is called as the tegmen. Now, in the seed, there's a tiny pore-like structure, which is the remnant of the micropyle. Like the micropyle remains like a small pore in the seed coat. Now, this pore is going to help in the entry of oxygen and water during seed germination. After that, the seed obviously has the endosperm, which may be present or it may be absent, like how we just saw. Then inside the seed, the embryo is present, which will give rise to the mature plant. And as far as the seed is concerned, there are two properties that seed possess: dormancy and seed germination. Now, dormancy is the property of the seed wherein it will not germinate if favorable conditions are not present, the seed is not going to germinate. If there's not enough moisture, if there's not the right temperature, the seed won't germinate. And that is what we call as dormancy. Okay. And the ability of the seed to give rise to the new plant or a seedling, that is seed germination. Were you asking something?
No, ma'am.
Understood? So here
Yes.
the favorable condition would be the right amount of oxygen, the right amount of temperature, humidity, moisture, everything. And as far
Yes,
as the dormancy is concerned, during the time of dormancy, the moisture content of the seed decreases and reaches around 10 to 15%. Clear?
Okay.
Now let us see the advantages
No,
of
one second,
dormancy.
1 second. Can I just read through it? Um, yes, ma'am. Okay.
Understood? Any doubts?
No, ma'am.
After that, there comes the advantages of seeds to angiosperm. Why are angiosperm considered as superior? The reason is that since they have seeds, right? Now,
Yeah.
seeds, they
Yeah.
have the capability of
Reproduction.
it gives rise to the new plants, and it has adaptive strategy that once it gets dispersed, it could germinate, right? Inside the seed, the young it has the reserve food material in it so as to develop the embryo or the young seedling. The seed coat is present, which provides the proper protection to the young embryo. And last but not the least, it is the result of sexual reproduction. So it has a lot of variations in it that is going to lead to evolution. The
Yes.
seeds are very important for our agriculture. Why? Because of the two properties that they show. First is dehydration, that you can dry the seed to store it for a long period of time. And as soon as you provide water to it, it will germinate. And dormancy is the seed's ability that whenever, if the necessary conditions are not present, it will not germinate. Clear?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Then comes seed viability. Now, the time period for which the seed is going to be able to germinate or it's going to have that power of germination, we call it as the seed viability. So, it is the period for which the seeds, they retain their power of germination. It's different for different kinds of seeds. For example, if we talk about oxalis, their seeds lose viability within few months. Lupine, which is the scientific name of which is Lupinus arcticus, it is the oldest seed that was excavated from Arctic tundra and it germinated after 10,000 years of dormancy. Imagine. For 10,000 years, it was dormant. And then, once it was given the right amount of temperature and everything, it germinated.
The seed can live for that long, 10,000 years.
Yeah.
Is it because of the layers which are protecting it? Like that?
It's because of the dormancy. Dormancy is like a period of inactivity.
Yeah. But
Hmm.
so that time there were no lupine plants, like at that time, because they germinated now.
Huh. So there was a lupine plant.
There was a lupine plant, but then its offsprings were not germinated that time.
The seed that produced, like the seed that was produced, maybe if it did not, because let's just say it got oppressed under the sand, oppressed under the soil and stuff. So it was not able to germinate because there was not enough, you can say, favorable conditions for it. But when it was dug out of there, then the right type of temperature, moisture, and everything which was provided to it, that resulted in its germination.
Okay. Okay.
Same, just like that, there is date palm, whose scientific name is Phoenix rectilifera, and this was excavated at King Herod's palace near the Dead Sea, and this was viable for 2,000 years. So after 2,000 years, it germinated. Yeah.
But okay.
Right?
Okay.
For that period of time, it was dormant, it was not doing anything. But as soon as the favorable thing was applied to it, it germinated. Now the
But like, how does the like seed like live?
persist
Yeah,
endosperm. That's the power of endosperm, the reserve food material.
that much of food material for like thousands of years, like
It's not
not like one
that
year.
much, it's how much it uses. Despite
Okay.
of like it maybe use tiny bits. Got it?
Yeah, but for 1,000 years, okay.
Now the number of seeds in a fruit is never going to exceed the like for example, however many ovules are there, that many seeds will be formed, and it's never going to exceed the number of ovules.
Hmm.
Orchids fruit, they contain thousands of tiny seeds, and there are parasitic species that also contain tiny seeds. That means that many ovules are there, such as orobranchi and striga. After that, we come on to the fruit. We are done with the seed. Now the fruit, like once the ovary part ripens, it becomes a fruit. The
Can you
wall
explain how these seeds again like stay for like 1,000 years? Just once more, like
seeds, they have
dormancy, yeah.
reserve
That
food material in them, which is the
okay.
endosperm. Okay, endosperm is highly nutritious. High, like it
Hmm.
has a very high calorific value, very high nutritive value. So when the seed is dormant, it's a period of inactivity. It's like the seed
Hmm.
will stay alive, and its metabolism will not be as fast as when it was not dormant.
Okay.
So while it is in an inactive state, it will take little by little nutrition. It will not take all at once, as a result of which it can stay viable. But
Ma'am, for all the seeds, it's not like that, right?
no.
Yeah. Okay.
For like the unique cases are given as examples. Rest the other seeds, they might germinate after a while. Like let's just say they'll have only a few months or few years. But mostly seeds, they persist for a long period of time.
Okay.
Okay, because if you take a seed, you dehydrate it and you store it. Now, when you want to rehydrate it and plant it, it will work. Because seeds
Hmm.
are that good. That is why angiosperms are so superior.
Hmm.
The wall of the ovary will form the wall of the fruit, and the wall of the fruit is called as the pericarp. Now,
Hmm.
depending upon from where the fruit is developing, there are three types of fruits: true, false, and parthenocarpic. Now, the fruit that develops from the ovary, that is a true fruit, like mango.
Hmm.
But if it's developing from other parts of the flower, such as the thalamus, in the case of apple, then you call it as false fruit. Because if the
Okay.
fruits can develop from other parts as well, like apple, thalamus, cashew nut, these are apple, thalamus, cashew nut, apple, strawberry, and cashew nut. These fruits they develop from other parts, like other than the ovary. So you don't call it as the true fruit, instead you call it as the false fruit. And then those fruits, like these are the most unique ones, that you can develop them without fertilization, without
Hmm.
sexual reproduction.
Parthenocarpic. Yeah, parthenocarpic fruit only. Huh.
Yeah, parthenocarpic fruit, and this phenomena wherein you are doing this procedure is
Bananas.
parthenocarping. Okay.
Yeah, bananas.
Yeah, bananas are there, and these fruits are going to be seedless. Why? Why will they be seedless?
Because they're not fertilized. No
Huh.
fertilization.
So
So they'll be
ovule
seedless.
is not fertilized. That is fertilized
Yeah.
ovule
Ovule is
becomes
not.
the seed. Since they do
Yeah.
not have any fertilization taking place, so they'll not have any seed formation. Other than that, remember that this can be done with the usage of certain hormones, right? Growth hormones,
Yes,
auxins,
ma'am.
cytokines, stuff.
Yes, ma'am.
Now the
Ma'am,
fruit,
what about in the case of tomatoes?
tomatoes. Yeah, tomatoes can also, it's a greenhouse crop. And yes, you can grow it under optimal conditions. But yeah, it grows as a result of fertilization.
So
But
okay.
see, normally you can grow any plant with the help of artificial hormones. It's possible. Tissue culture is very, very possible. That is why it's such an emerging field. But we are
Hmm.
talking about the unnatural case scenarios, right? That is the Partino part. Clear?
Yeah. Yes, ma'am.
Now, the fruits, depending upon whether they have flesh or not, they can be fleshy or dry. Fleshy fruits are mango, guava, oranges, and dry fruits would be mustard, groundnut, and different types of fruits.
Hmm.
Coming on to the last two topics of this chapter, that is apomixis and polyembryony. Now, when the seeds are produced without fertilization, this phenomena is called as apomixis. Okay, it is seen
Okay.
in grasses and Asteraceae family. This is
Hmm.
not done or induced from the outside, rather this happens naturally. Okay, it is a form of asexual reproduction which mimics sexual reproduction, isn't it? Sexual
Okay.
reproduction is like fertilization has to happen and then the seed will be formed. But here, seed is being formed, but without fertilization.
Hmm.
Now there is
Oh, yeah.
this is the a little bit extra adventive apomixis. It tells us that if the embryo is arising from diploid sporophytic cells. Sporophytic cells means the body cells of the like these female reproductive system, like the nucellus, the integuments, right? The parts that do not participate in the reproduction. If the seed is being formed from them, then we call it as adventive apomixis. Clear?
Okay.
This is seen in citrus, opuntia, and man. After that, there comes polyembryony. Polyembryony means the more than one embryo. Poly means many. Embryony refers to the embryo presence. So when
Hmm.
there is like more than one embryo in a seed, call it as polyembryony found in
Ma'am,
citrus. Huh?
so here there'll be like fertilization twice since there are two embryos.
No, two
No,
embryos.
like
More than
once
one, like
there'll
it
be
can have
two.
multiple, five, six, seven, eight, multiple. Fertilization one resulting into many embryos. That is polyembryo. Understood?
They give rise to like separate, like one will divide into two like that.
Hmm.
Ah, okay.
And then there is apomictic polyembryony. This is like an artificial method wherein hybrids can be made with the help of like artificially mimicking the sexual reproduction, forming the seed without the fertilization, and then having multiple embryos in them. And since it
Hmm.
is done artificially, so they will have higher yield, they'll have higher vigor and stress resistance. But the production of such hybrids is very, very costly. So epimixis is the solution to the problem. If the plant is naturally making the seeds without fertilization, then that saves the time as well as the money, isn't it? So with
Hmm.
this, the chapter is complete.
Okay.
So now we will be moving on to human reproduction, right? The part where we left off. So we had discussed the spermatogenesis, right? That was completed.
Yeah. Yeah.
Structure of sperm, what about that?
Yeah, we did that also. No, I mean, 1 minute. So we didn't do the. We did the structure episode. Yeah, so we did that.
Did I teach you about that? Oogenesis was has to be started, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So give me 2 minutes. I'm bringing water for myself.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So we were talking about the oogenesis, right? Now, oogenesis refers to the formation of the female gamete, which is the ovum, right? Now, when
Mm.
does it begin? It begins during the embryonic development itself, right? And like while the female is still a fetus, then only the process of oogenesis begins. Now, at
Mm.
this stage, like there are millions of gamete mother cells that we call as oogonia, just like how spermatogonia was there. So same way here, oogonia are formed within the ovary of the fetus. And later on, after this has been formed and the fetus is born, now that female fetus, now the baby will not have any more oogonia formed after the birth. So if she's born with 1 million, she'll have that. If she's born with 500,000, she'll have that. And that's it. None of them are added later on after the birth. Now, what happens is that the cells, like the oogonial cells, they start dividing and then they enter into the prophase 1 of meiosis 1. Okay. And then they get temporarily arrested at that particular stage. And we call it as the primary oocyte. But which stage? At the diplotin stage of the prophase 1. Do you remember the stages of prophase 1?
Um, I
Leptotin,
will remember. Second stage, right?
leptotin, zygotin, pachytin, diplotin, and then diamine.
Yes. Oh, okay, okay.
Now,
Oh, that part. Okay. Yeah.
so the
Okay.
primary oocyte, now what once the primary oocyte is formed, then it gets surrounded with a layer of granulosa cell. Okay, and then it becomes primary follicle. Okay.
Hmm.
When the primary follicle has another layer of granulosa cell, it becomes secondary follicle. But inside, primary oocyte is still there. That circular thing, this is the primary oocyte.
Okay.
But together it is called as the primary follicle. A large
Hmm.
number of follicles, they start to degenerate from the time of birth up until the time of puberty. And at the time of puberty, only 60,000 to 80,000 follicles are left in both the ovaries.
Hmm.
Now the primary follicles, they're going to get surrounded by more and more granulosa cells and they will transform themselves into the secondary follicle. And then the secondary follicle is going to get one more layer of granulosa cell and become tertiary follicle. Okay. And how do you know
Okay.
that it is a tertiary follicle? It's because the tertiary follicle, it has a large fluid-filled cavity, which we call as the antrum. So the presence of antrum signifies that it is a tertiary follicle. Yeah.
Okay. Yes, ma'am.
Now, after that, the primary oocyte, which is still present inside the tertiary follicle, now it will grow in size and it will complete the meiosis 1. And at the end of that, it will make a secondary oocyte and the tiny first polar body, which is like
Hmm.
useless. It will degenerate later on. Okay. Now the tertiary follicle, further it changes into a mature Graafian follicle. Okay. It's like more and more granulosa cells will be formed. And now the secondary oocyte, it starts to have a new membrane surrounding it, which is called as the zona pellucida.
Hmm.
Okay, at this point now, once the hormonal level reaches the different stage, now the Graafian follicle will rupture on the excessive of luteinizing hormone, if you remember reproductive health.
Yeah.
Hmm. And no, not reproductive,
Not human thingy.
menstrual cycle.
Yeah.
Hmm. So you don't remember, no? I haven't taught.
No, I remember that. I mean, I remember studying about it. But yeah.
So, and the 14th day of the cycle, the Graafian follicle is now going to rupture and release the secondary oocyte from the Graafian follicle. Yeah. And then this process of the release of the secondary oocyte, which is the ovum, is what we call as ovulation. Is it clear?
Yeah. Yes, ma'am. This is the menstrual cycle, right? Release of ovum.
Release of ovum is one of the steps of menstrual cycle, like one of the stage.
Oh, okay. Okay, I thought it was directly to the menstrual cycle.
No, no, no.
Okay.
It is, yeah, it is there, but it is one of the stages. Now, menstrual
Hmm.
cycle, it is the cycle which takes place in most of the female primates, like monkeys, apes, and humans. And it is the reproductive cycle. The first menstruation, it begins at the puberty, and we call it as menarche. And the last menstruation is called as the menopause. That occurs at the age of like 45 to 60. Now, the menstrual cycle or the menstruation, it is repeated every single month on the interval of every 28 to 29 days. Now, the cycle of events that starts from one menstruation till the next, since it is a cycle, we call it as menstrual cycle. There are these three particular phases in the menstrual cycle. You have the menstruation phase, the follicular phase, which is also called as proliferative. Proliferation, what is the meaning of proliferation? Hmm?
The removal of the layer, right? Uh,
No.
mucilaginous.
To, to proliferate means to divide.
Oh,
Okay.
oh, okay, okay.
So the first phase of the menstrual cycle is called as the menstrual phase, wherein the actual menstrual flow comes out through the vaginal passage. It lasts for 3 to 5 days. And why does it happen? It is happening because of the failure of fertilization of the ovum.
Hmm.
And the endometrial lining, it breaks down, as a result of which the blood vessels and the uterine vessels, all of that, it is shed off and comes out in the form of liquid blood through the vagina. The
Hmm.
unfertilized egg or the ovum is also released this process. Now,
Hmm.
if the menstruation is not happening, that particular thing might indicate that the female is pregnant, right? But it's not the case every time, because
Yeah.
irregular menstruation can happen due to variety of reasons, such as some sort of disease like PCOD, PCOS, right? Other than
Hmm.
that, stress, and poor health, heavy weight, obesity, a lot of diseases that can also cause irregular menstruation. It's always not necessary that it is like the female is pregnant.
Hmm. Mhm.
Understood?
Mhm.
Hmm.
If the child has like excessive amount of weight, will the menstruation be early? Like it will be earlier, right? As the weight is more. Why is
There are
that?
many other reasons also for that.
Okay.
Okay, and yes, heavy weight can also lead to early menstruation in the child. Also, this thing, having a lot of processed food and the junk food, that is also leading to, because it is having a bad impact on the health, right? Which, as a result of which, the process of oogenesis, like the process of menstruation begins like early than it's supposed to.
Mm. Okay, okay. So like the processed food can actually like induce it earlier. Okay.
So after the menstruation phase is done, then the second phase of the menstrual cycle begins, which is follicular phase. Okay. And this phase is also called as proliferation. You can call it as the period of regeneration. Now, the oogenesis process begins again, right? As a result of which the gonadotrophins, that are the luteinizing hormone, the follicle stimulating hormone, they are released. They increase and they act on the oogonial cells to start the process of oogenesis. Clear?
Okay.
So the hormones such as estrogen, progesterone are released, as a result of which the division begins, the primary oocyte is formed, the secondary oocyte is formed, Graafian follicle is formed, everything, all that like granulosa cells, they get surrounded and everything of that sort happens. And then at the end, like on the 14th day, suddenly there is like a rise in the hormone that is LH. Luteinizing hormone reaches the peak of its concentration, and that is called as the LH surge. As a result of LH surge, the ovulation happens. Clear?
Yes,
So on
ma'am.
the 14th day, the LH hormone receives the highest peak, as a result of which the Graafian follicle ruptures in the mid-cycle. And that peak attaining of the luteinizing hormone is what we call as LH surge. It causes the rupture of the Graafian follicle and the release of the ovum, and this is called as ovulation. And this phase, this tiny phase, is ovulatory.
Okay.
Now, after the Graafian follicle gets ruptured, imagine it's injured.
Yeah.
Then the secondary oocyte got out. Then comes the luteal phase, which is the secretory phase. This is very important as far as the pregnancy is concerned. So during this phase, the Graafian follicle will transform and become corpus luteum. Okay. And this corpus luteum is the body that is responsible for the secretion of huge amount of progesterone. And throughout the entire pregnancy, progesterone is the most important hormone to keep the endometrial lining intact. So this progesterone, it is very essential for the maintenance of the endometrium. A well-developed endometrium is very important because the fertilized ovum or the zygote is going to go and attach to the endometrium. If the endometrium is not formed well, then where would it attach? Right?
Yeah.
So that is why during the pregnancy, the menstruation stops, the endometrial lining does not shed off. But in the absence of fertilization, the corpus luteum, what will it do? It's not needed. It doesn't need to secrete the progesterone. So the corpus luteum, it degenerates and it becomes this thing, corpus albicans. Okay, it degenerates and it breaks down, as a result of which the supply of progesterone stops. The endometrial lining is not kept intact. It will shed off. So in the human females, the menstruation stops at the age of 45 to 50 permanently, and we call that as menopause. Any doubts? After that, there comes fertilization and implantation. Now you know that in order for the fertilization to take place, the sperms have to be transferred into the female's vaginal passage. And that is done by releasing the sperms from the penis into the vaginal passage of the female during the coitus or sexual intercourse. This process is called as insemination. Now, once the ovum is released, it goes to the ampulla part of the fallopian tube and it waits there for the sperm to arrive. And you know that the sperms, they have vigorous motility. So they will swim and reach the ampulla region wherein it would go there and fuse with the ovum that is waiting.
Okay.
So fertilization, it's the process wherein the sperm fuses with the egg in order to form a diploid zygote. But always remember that it's very important for a successful fertilization to take place. The release of the ovum and to it to come and sit in the ampulla and wait for it, and then the reaching of the sperm, it has to be done simultaneously.
Okay.
That is why the
Wait,
couple.
sorry. Like, what?
Meaning the sperm has to reach the ampullary region when the egg is waiting there.
Oh, yeah,
Like
okay.
while it has come. That is why for the people that are trying to conceive, they look at the dates. Like, okay, this is the date when the female ovulates. And then only they'll have the sexual intercourse in order to have the gametes be simultaneously reach each other. Clear?
Yes, ma'am.
Now see, this is the picture of the layers that surrounds the ovum. Okay, first layer is zona pellucida, there is perivitelline space, like all of these layers surround the ovum. The sperm has to pierce through all of these layers to get inside. So during the process of fertilization, a sperm would come in contact with the zona pellucida layer of the ovum and causes ionic changes in the membrane. As soon as the, like, for example, if this is the zona pellucida layer, the sperm is coming. It as soon as it comes in contact with the zona pellucida layer, there is a conformational change that occurs, because
Yeah.
now the ovum has to become in such a way that it will block the entry of any other sperm other than this one that has reached. Why?
Oh.
Because several sperms would come and fertilize that egg, but we only
Hmm.
need one for the, or else it will be an abnormality, isn't it?
Ma'am, won't like two sperms come in one ova? That is also.
That does happen. That's like a unique case. That's like a unique case. But if like two sperms cannot fertilize one ovum, one sperm has to fertilize one ovum.
How are twins born then?
After the, like, if it is monozygotic twins, after one zygote is formed, the zygote gets split into two.
Yeah. No,
That is,
not those twins. Like male and female twins.
the non-identical twins, they are formed when, let's just say, there are two ovum that are released in that case.
Oh, they can. Oh, okay.
Because they have like two separate, like they look very different. They have different
Yeah.
characteristics, so that is the case, non-identical twins. But identical or monozygotic twins, they are formed from one zygote that splits in.
Okay.
So the process of fertilization, where does it take place? It takes place as the ampullary junction of the fallopian tube, right?
Mm.
The sperm, it comes in contact with the zona pellucida layer and it causes the changes in the membrane so that there is no additional entry of the sperm. Other than that, it sort of like, as the sperm reaches there, it starts to dissolve that area so as to get inside.
Mm.
And how does it do so? Because you know that the sperm's head, the cap, has acrosome, and the acrosome secretes the hydrolytic enzyme, as a result of which the layer, zona pellucida layer, gets digested in that area. Also, tell me the
Digested in the
acrosome,
sense? Like,
dissolve.
no, it like dissolves, like how like it
It
goes.
like makes a way for the sperm to get inside.
Okay.
Acrosome is the modification of which cell organelle?
I have no clue. I don't know. I didn't do this chapter yet.
Golgi apparatus.
Going, okay.
Now, when the sperm enters the ovum, now the second meiotic division gets induced. Okay. And then a large ootid is formed, which is haploid, and along with that, second polar body is formed. As the sperm is now entering, now it will fuse with the ootid to form the diploid zygote. Got it?
Okay. Yes, ma'am.
And then after the zygote has been formed, then it will start to divide mitotically. Okay, mitotically, because why? We have to increase the number of cells now. We don't have to interfere with the chromosomes. We just have to interfere with the cells. And after the zygote starts dividing mitotically, then the blastomere is formed, right? And while, like for example, here is the ampulla part. Now from here, the zygote is moving towards the uterus, right? So while it is moving towards the uterus, it will undergo the various divisions. And these various divisions that the zygote will be undergoing while it is moving, we'll call it as cleavage. Cleavage means division.
Okay.
Now the embryo with 8 to 16 blastomere is called as
Wait,
the
zygote,
morula.
mama. Zygote will be moving, right? Towards the cleavage. I mean, towards the uterus. That is called cleavage. Okay.
It will be moving and it will be dividing simultaneously.
Oh,
While it is moving, it is dividing and becoming different stages. Like zygote is 2N, then it will be having 2 cells in it, 3 cells, 4 cells, 5 cells, 8 cells, 16 cells, like that.
okay.
While it is traveling from the ampulla to the uterus. So the embryo with the 8 to 16 blastomeres is what we call as a morula. Okay.
Okay. Yes,
Then
ma'am.
further morula divides and becomes the blastocyst. Okay.
Yes,
Cell
ma'am.
divisions continue and the blastocyst is formed, which has the blastocoel, which is the middle cavity. And now in the blastocyst, the outer layer is called as the trophoblast and the inner is called as the inner cell mass. Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Now the blastocyst will attach itself in the uterus and this process is called as implantation. And implantation ultimately leads to the pregnancy. Now, after the implantation has taken place, from the trophoblast cells, which is like the peripheral cell layer, it will form finger-like projection called as the chorionic villi. These chorionic villi, they sort of like fuse with the uterine wall, okay, and they are richly supplied with the blood vessel. And they fuse along with the uterine tissue to form the placenta. Placenta is the temporary endocrine gland. It is the structural and functional unit between the fetus and the mother or the uterine wall.
Give nutrition and take out the waste.
Always remember that it is the temporary endocrine gland. What is the secretion of endocrine gland called as? Hormone.
I don't know.
Hormones.
Oh, that's it?
Yeah, the secretions of endocrine gland is hormone and the secretion of exocrine gland is enzymes.
Oh yeah, okay.
Now the functions of the placenta, it acts like an ultrafilter, means that everything that reaches the fetus, it travels through the placenta. The inorganic materials, organic materials, nutrients, hormones, everything that it gets transported through the placenta from the mother to the fetus. It acts like a temporary endocrine gland because it will be secreting the hormones such as human chorionic gonadotrophin, that is HCG, human placental lactogen, HPL, relaxin, estrogen, and progesterone. Out of all of these hormones, the first three, HCG, HPL, and relaxin, are only secreted in the pregnant female.
Okay.
Now, the HCG hormone, it's going to stimulate the corpus luteum to secrete as many progesterone as possible. Okay? And the umbilical cord is there, which connects the fetus to the placenta. The average duration of the human pregnancy is called as the not just human pregnancy, the time period for which the pregnancy would last, we call it as the gestation period. For humans, it is 9 months or 38 weeks or 266 days.
Okay.
Now, as soon as the implantation takes place, the inner cell mass, which is the group of cells which was there, it starts to divide and forms the germ layers. Outer ectoderm, middle mesoderm, and inner endoderm. And these layers, they will be giving rise to the organs, the process called as organogenesis. Now, the inner cell mass are those cells that contain the stem cells, which have the ability to give rise to all sorts of tissues and all sorts of organs. Clear?
Yes, ma'am.
Any doubts up until now?
No.
Okay, then. We will keep it till here only. We only have a little bit of developmental thing left, which I will do, start in the next class and hopefully complete within 15 minutes. And which chapter will we be doing next after this? Reproductive health.
Yeah.
Okay. So we'll keep it till here only today's class, and in the next class we'll begin with a new chapter. Okay?
Yes, ma'am.
And as far as this chapter is concerned, I'm going to send you the notes today.
Yes, ma'am. Ma'am, I did not receive the previous notes.
Previous notes of?
The plant one.
Sexual reproduction flowering plant. Okay, I'll send that also.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. All right, dear. Then I'll see you.